All right, we're live. Ben Stern, thank you for being with us.
Sean, it's going to be fun. Appreciate being here.
You're the man. I'm glad you're on the podcast today.
I appreciate that. Thanks. You are the man.
No. Thanks for saying that. How's things going?
Good.
Yeah?
Good. Things are going well. It's amazing that it's almost Christmas time. It's 2024, almost in the books. I don't know how the heck time went by so quickly.
And you were just traveling, you said?
I was in Ithaca. My daughter's at Cornell, and I just had Parents' Weekend, which was incredible. It was incredible.
Which is crazy to think about that you have a daughter in college right now.
It is pretty wild. It's pretty wild. You know, I'm from West Virginia. We have kids early. I was 16.
You were 16 when you had your...
No, I wasn't.
Oh.
I wasn't.
I mean, with the way you look, I was like, you definitely could have been 16.
Yeah, no, I was 21. No, I wasn't 21. I was 31. I was 31 when I had her. I turned 50 in 2 months. And so, you know, I think of myself as being 30 years old, and then you look in the mirror and you're like, oh my goodness, no. Like in my head and mirror disconnect. But, you know, having a daughter in college does, you know, it makes you feel a little bit older, but it's nice to have a relationship with somebody that you've seen, you've raised and who's doing well. And it was just so much fun seeing her.
That's
really
cool.
was.
One thing my dad has told me that as you age, your mind as a man stays at a certain age, right? So he's like, my dad's like, call it 62, 63.
Right.
But he's like, the way I think, I'm still in my early 30s.
Yeah.
Is that actually true?
I'm 35 in my head. Yeah, literally. Like I think I'm 35 when I'm skiing, when I'm talking with people, when I'm out at night. Yeah, totally. I've been able to convince myself this.
So you are an insurance expert.
I try to be. I play one on TV.
You are the go-to guy when it comes to insurance. For the audience, give us a little bit of background on what you do. From an insurance standpoint.
Yeah. So from an insurance standpoint, I help C-suite executives, teams make good insurance purchasing decisions. And so, you know, my title is I'm a broker, right? Insurance broker, property and casualty insurance broker. And that's different than some other lines of insurance. Property and casualty is, you know, you're insuring a building, you're insuring workers' compensation, you're insuring assets, you're insuring liability. Companies get sued for a lot of things. I make sure that the right coverage is in place. And then I negotiate terms with an insurance carrier in behalf of companies, middle market, upper middle market companies. And then I bring back and we deliver and we talk about the insurance and we look at what can we, you know, lay off to a third party insurance carrier, what can we, you know, hold on internally, we're comfortable with, and make sure that when accidents do occur, and they do, that there's pockets that will be able to pay for it.
So if I'm totally new to understanding insurance and I'm like a beginner, as I'm running a startup or I'm running a business, and you were to basically explain the industry in like beginner terms or layman terms,
Totally.
How would you explain the industry? Because to me, it seems like it's pretty complicated. Like there's so many different facets to it.
Right.
Like how would you break it down?
Here's how I would break it down. And so let's take an example of a company that's a startup, right?
Okay.
So the first thing I would recommend to a company that's a startup is you don't want to be insurance rich, cash flow poor, right? So what does that mean? That means buying insurance for probable events or coverage that maybe you're a lender or a investor is requiring. So in the United States, the one insurance policy that is required by law is workers' compensation. So if you have any employees, you have to buy workers' compensation. You know, there's some states where you have to buy it from the state, but most states you buy it through a broker, right? So I'd say, look, you need that coverage. And that's if somebody gets hurt at work, right?
Okay.
If they get hurt at work, somebody has to pay their medical bills. And
the insurance provider is going to come in and basically pay for a portion of that.
First dollar, pay for everything.
Okay, can you give me an example of that? Like someone falls at the job site?
Yeah, exactly in this one. So, somebody falls at the job site, they go to the kitchen. I saw there's food here in the office, and they trip over a cord and they fall, hit their head, and they can't work for a week, and they've got some medical bills, for the conk in the head, right?
What about if someone is driving to a business meeting as a sales representative and they get into a car crash?
Yeah, nuanced question, because if they're driving from their home to that meeting, that is actually not covered. They're not working, they're commuting. But if they came into the office and then they went to to see their client or to the meeting, that would be covered. So for you and me in our day jobs, right? We go into the office, then we go see clients. That auto accident or getting hurt or comp. It's also covered under auto liability as well. But to your question, they were working. So yeah, that would be an example.
Got it. So you have workers' compensation.
Right.
And then break us down. There's other facets of insurance.
So that's startup, right?
Okay.
Signs a lease in an office, like this. So the landlord will mandate that tenant carry general liability coverage. That's if somebody slips and falls and sues the building owner and the company. That's one line of coverage. Now they may buy, laptops and have a server. Maybe there's some company assets that they insure. That's a property policy. They lose property. And then let's say there's a company auto, a couple autos, right? So that auto liability gets picked up under a commercial insurance policy. And then there may be an umbrella. An umbrella just increases the limits on the liability coverage. Maybe the landlord says you need $1 million umbrella, so that startup in that example would purchase that coverage, and then that about covers it. There's some benefits and a few others, but that's about it.
So that insurance from a property standpoint.
Yeah.
Right. What if that covers if there's any issues at the property with people getting hurt?
No.
No.
So think of insurance as two distinct types of coverage. Property.
Okay.
Property is assets that you have on your balance sheet that get destroyed or damaged, right? So let's say fire breaks out, burns down all of your furniture and your computers. That check gets written to you. You lost that property, right?
Yes.
Insurance carrier writes you the check as the tenant or the property policy holder. Liability is a little different. Liability is somebody sues you, right? So somebody could sue you for that. Third party, the FedEx person comes in, trips and falls. They bring suit against you. Somebody, you hit somebody with your auto in the course of business. Third party. So think of liability as a third party lawsuit. Property is first party loss. Check gets written to you. That's the divide.
Got it.
Yeah.
What if the roof was, I'm sorry, I'm bringing up all these what ifs, but I'm always just curious if the roof falls in or something happens with the building.
Yeah.
Is that the landlord has their own insurance and that's covered by the landlord's insurance, or is that on the tenant?
Yeah. Total nuanced question on this one. So there would be multiple insurance carriers. The landlord would pay, their property policy would pay for that fixed roof, right? This is assuming that you're a tenant and there's other tenants. It's not a triple net lease, right? That you're the only tenant. So in that example, the landlord's property policy pays for the fixed roof. You as the tenant, your property policy would cover your property that was damaged. It also may pay for any lost income that you may have.
Got it.
So a startup tech firm, most folks can probably work from home. You don't lose that much revenue. But let's say that you are a manufacturing facility, right? And you lost the ability to manufacture, you lost those sales. That lost revenue can get picked up under the property policy as well. So it's a little nuanced of a question, right? Because you'd have two carriers that could be involved.
Definitely. And then I'm sure you do things in healthcare.
I do. Not an expert. First to say this, I'm dangerous. I can talk about it for like 15 minutes. And if you don't know anything about it, you think I'm really smart. But if you do know something, you say, this guy's an idiot. You shouldn't be talking about it. But we do, as a company, do healthcare. So that would be, group health. You need to get, Anthem in or Blue Cross Blue Shield. So we have divisions and experts that do that as well. Yeah.
What's the craziest thing you've come across from an insurance standpoint? Do you have any
I would tell
wild stories?
Yeah, totally. I'll give you a really interesting risk. I won't use names because some of the names are recognizable, but we were approached by a group that was going to buy an oil derrick in international waters.
Okay,
like
an oil derrick.
Yeah,
I don't even know what that is.
So imagine ExxonMobil, has a piece of equipment that is attached to the bottom of the ocean, and there's a top on it where you can land a helicopter and people live, and they drill down. You drill in to look for oil, right?
Okay.
So this group was going to buy the abandoned oil derrick and have non-FDA approved psychotherapy experiments, right? And it was wild because I thought, A, I want to get in a helicopter going into international waters. That sounds pretty cool to do. And then B, how the heck do you insure this? And so we went down the path with this group. They ended up not buying it, but it was interesting to figure out how we would do it. And so there's one that was really interesting. I thought was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any others?
I had this group that was going to put on, it's funny, we were just talking about Burning Man. They were going to put on, internally, me and my partner called it Waterman. They were going to have a festival on the water in Sacramento.
No way.
Yeah. And, the boats would link together and you'd have a communal group that would meet similar to a music festival. And that seemed like a pretty cool thing to go to as well. It didn't happen, unfortunately, but it was interesting trying to figure out how we would insure the risk.
Yeah. Yeah, you probably come across you create relationships with people and then you get calls from them randomly when shit hits the fan a little bit.
Yeah, no, totally on this one. Right. Or else you get a call, I'm known for, maybe insuring some interesting risks, some outside the box risks. So, I'll get a question like this pretty frequently. And sometimes it's a pretty cutting edge company. And when I look at it, I think, man, I really want to work on this. I hope this comes to fruition because this seems like a really, really cool thing to work on.
Yeah.
I think when I was younger, I was doing more of this interesting stuff and I'm not getting as much interesting stuff. It's getting to be more sort of vanilla nuts and bolts types of risks.
Yeah.
But I do love when they're out there. So if anybody's listening, please send them over to me. I like working on them.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've pivoted a little bit more towards the leadership role within the company too.
And that's part of the progression.
So you're probably not doing as much brokering. I mean, you're probably still doing brokering, like you said, but a lot of it also has to do with like leadership within the company.
Right. So, I still do. I'm still a retail broker, but to your point, that's accurate. So really what I'm doing right now is helping our brokers that work for us, right? Mm-hmm. So I am working on deals. A lot of them are their deals. So I'm supporting them and helping them collaborate and brainstorm on it. But a lot of my time right now is on the leadership part of my job.
Yeah. So when I was graduating from college, I was playing ball at USC, and the industries that I was looking at, which you probably have heard the story before, it's usually like if you're decent at sales, they recommend going into brokerage, commercial real estate, which is what I'm in, but also
especially
yeah. So commercial real estate or go into insurance. And so I was like right out of college, like looking at insurance companies, not really knowing much about it, but people recommending like, hey, you should look at this because like your quality of life insurance, if you're good, is pretty amazing. You make your own schedule, you have autonomy to kind of do what you want. Like there's great money, but brokers have a lot of that too. They're just kind of different, but you're in the service business.
Right.
I decided to go into brokerage, but had I known you maybe back then, my life might have taken a little bit of a different trajectory. I've noticed that brokers on the real estate side and on the insurance side, there's a ton of similarities.
Personality-wise, right?
Personality-wise,
absolutely.
We're both servicing clients, right? I'm servicing clients looking for office space or industrial space, helping them kind of think through their options, negotiating the deal. You're helping people. Basically, you're assessing risk and then you're underwriting them from an insurance standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, I think the commercial real estate has a better PR agent that makes it sexier, right? And so I think a lot of good talent goes into the commercial real estate sector as a result.
Yeah.
It's harder to convince somebody who doesn't understand insurance that, hey, this is pretty cool and pretty fun, because from the outside looking in, you hear insurance isn't sexy, right?
Yeah.
Commercial real estate is sexy, but it's very similar in the sense that, our client acquisition, retention, we're working with C-suite, very similar types of people do well, I think, in both industries.
Yeah. I love the insurance industry. I don't know a ton about it, but all my friends that are in the insurance industry, I'm just like, you got a cool job. Because like
you can make it cool, right?
You can make it cool. Because as in, I love this idea of it's all relationship based, right? And then like you basically once you have a client, you then have residuals that come in so long as you keep that client.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's pluses and minuses. I love it. I find it really interesting from an intellectual standpoint. I love the people that we work with. There's always that other side. The other side on this one is that, we're always living 3 months ahead in our lives because we have renewals coming up. Renewals can be stressful. These are big expenditures for companies, and we want to make sure that we're doing a really good job. And that adds to a little bit of stress. And, ultimately too, like, you can be hired and fired multiple times per year, right? And that's a unique part of the insurance industry. A little bit, on your side of it as well. I don't think maybe as frequently because, we have these policies all throughout the course of the year, and they're 12-month policies versus, 5-7 year, contracts that you're working in. But there's the key with dealing with both sides, the good part and the bad part, I think, is what makes you successful in my industry and in your industry. You got to deal with the highs and the lows.
Yeah. When you are recruiting, what do you look for in the types of people that you will hire at the company?
Yeah, I mean, look, you and Mason are kind of like the ideal people, and I talked to you about this. And so the reason why we found this, you played baseball at C, and Mason, you played at LMU. And so I'm a big believer in that in today's workforce, right? So the folks that are in their 20s and 30s, I really like individuals that played sports at a very high level. And, look, I sat the bench playing baseball in high school, and I couldn't make a good an average high school team in California. I'm from Pennsylvania, but being able to regiment your time, being able to focus, be able to take direction, right? Be able to take coaching, I think is really a unique, it's something I think that people that are my age maybe had this a little bit more and were open to it, that we had more maybe some, where parents like telling, helping us and doing things, we weren't told how great we were. If anything, my parents used to tell me, you're not doing everything right. And so, I think it's a generational thing. I think with younger people, having somebody say you're doing it the wrong way is actually good. Mm-hmm. So I think that the regimentation, the coaching is a real good, it really helps in my job. I also like folks that were, let's say, ROTC, when they were in college.
Yeah. Military background.
Military. ROTC in particular, because you're doing that and going to college at the same time. That's a commitment. And, I think you work with a little bit of an edge because you're feeling like you're paying for things. I haven't hired anybody from the Surface Academy, but I really would like to. West Point, right, Naval Academy, I think they would do really well. Same thing, regimentation, direction, being able to schedule themselves, right? And I think that those are really good qualities right now.
So when someone that so let's just say you hire someone and they're making mistakes, and you talked about how my generation or our generation, they've been told their whole life they're great, they get a participation trophy.
Right.
We sometimes don't have the best expectations, and I don't think that our generation deals with criticism as well as maybe other generations do.
Yeah.
How do you approach those people?
Right. And, we're talking in general.
Yeah, of course. Not everyone's like that.
Right? So,
Mason's definitely not like that. Some of us take criticism better than others.
And there's certainly people that, Gen Xer, that certainly don't take criticism well as well. So I'm just kind of dealing with like the averages, right? So the larger, sure. not the outliers or the smaller portion of it. Well, I think it's, Sean, it's balanced with giving people praise.
Yes.
Right. So when somebody is doing a good job and making good decisions, to acknowledge that and let people know, hey, you're doing a great job. I'm seeing you do something that's really good. I think that if you're consistent doing that, then when there are things that you do need to talk about, people are a little bit more receptive to listening to you, right? If all you're doing is saying you're doing things wrong, then you get tuned out after a while, like regardless of your generation or how old you are. And so for me in particular, I want to focus in on doing what we do really well. And then also let people know that we're humans. Mm-hmm. We make mistakes. It's okay. We don't live in a bubble, And so when we talk about how to make corrective action so it doesn't happen again, I think that's it's a better way of talking with somebody versus just saying you did something wrong and making somebody feel bad.
Yeah.
When we're all going to make mistakes.
What is the culture at your company?
Yeah, I mean, that's similar to what we're talking about right now with communication with employees. It's being really upfront with employees, letting people know the expectations. But we're also a very fun-loving company, mm-hmm. and so really, as I think about right now, talking with you, what makes us tick, I think that's it. We all like people. We like insurance. We like our coworkers. We like working with people. We don't take ourselves so seriously. Egos don't work in our company, right? It doesn't. And so, when we attract people who want more out of coming to work, they want those types of qualities when they come into the office versus going into a stale office and just, talking with their coworkers.
Is there anything worse? Going into like a brutal, stale office.
Terrible.
Like super corporate.
Terrible on this
one.
And
I feel like that was a lot of what was going on maybe in the past, where you had very corporate environments where everyone's afraid of making mistakes.
Right.
And when you walk into those types of places, you can just feel it. You can just feel the energy of this atmosphere, this culture. This doesn't... it wouldn't be a place that I would probably want to work at. And some people are stuck in those types of cultures, trying to make ends meet, which is, I respect that. But when you come across a culture which is very uplifting and warm and fun, like you mentioned, you notice it. And you want to be a part of companies and cultures that are like that.
Yeah, and I think also too, if you want people to come into the office,
right,
they need to be going into something like that versus that stale culture we talked about. No one wants to go there.
Yeah,
right. And so what I'm hoping is that as people are coming back into the office, that our culture is attractive. right, for talent. And I think that it is. We have a very lively atmosphere. I mean, I play music during the day, right?
What kind of music you playing?
It depends. If it's me, it's gonna be like 90s hip hop, right? I'm like on this like thing where I'm obsessed with this band from the 90s called Ben Folds 5.
Wow,
right?
cool.
Which
I don't know.
This guy
I'll
plays
check
the
him out.
piano. It's incredible, by the way. And so it depends on when you come into the office, and somebody will pick a channel on Spotify, and all day we're playing country music, or we're playing rock and roll music or classic rock. So it doesn't really matter. It's the sound in the background that for me is important. It sounds joyous and it sounds busy. It fills the air, and I think that that's part for at least the Los Angeles office that fills it's the culture of that, or the vibe of that office.
Isn't it amazing what music does in the background?
Yeah.
It really makes a difference.
Right. Well, not only when you're listening to it in the background, but when you walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, do you remember this group?" Or, "Hey, let me tell you about this concert that I went to." You're sharing something positive, a positive experience, right? And so for me, that's what I like. The other thing that actually makes me a little sad sometimes is that a group will come on and I'll say, "Hey, do you know this band Farside, or this hip hop group Farside, or Tribe Called Quest?" And the younger people will say, "I have no idea who you're talking about." So that's the only downside. It makes me feel old sometimes.
Yeah, I feel like I fall into that category. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
I have no idea who you
No on that one. Tribe Called Quest.
But those are just we got a list of things to look up on Spotify.
Totally on this one.
So thank you for the music.
Sure.
How many days a week is the team in every day? I should say, how many days a week is the team in?
Yeah. So generally we have a hybrid schedule where people are in 3 days a week. The sales folks, can be in and out of the office. I'm a big, a proponent of like, hey, if you can come in more than 3, great. If you are a younger person who's just starting and just learning, look, I know it's 3 days. I'd like you to come in 4 or 5 days. And here's the reason why. I think you can learn quicker, faster, better when you can walk up to somebody and ask a question versus sending an email and waiting for a response. And then also too, look, work is still a people. We're still a people, economy, right? Like people make decisions because of who they like. And so if you're in the office building those relationships, it's going to help you out, as you progress in your career. I think a lot better than if you chose to work from home.
Yeah, I think one of the best pieces of advice I could give to the younger generation is, if it's optional to go in every day, you should 100% be going in.
Absolutely.
And the reason for that is it demonstrates hard work and your drive and ambition within the company, but you will learn so much more than the individuals that stay at home and work remotely. Now, it might be a little bit more cushy, as in like you were able to have a little bit more freedom, and do things that you're not attached to working 8 hours a day. But I'm telling you, like, you will go so much further in your career and you will learn so much if you are in every day learning from like people like yourself, or learning from like the senior people within the company.
Right.
You're going to pick up on subtleties that other people just aren't picking up. And by the way, you staying home and working from home, like there is going to be bad habits that you will pick up doing that.
Yeah, for certain on this one too. And also too, it helps you to cultivate your emotional intelligence. And, as I get older, the more I realize that the emotional intelligence, maybe as opposed to your innate intelligence, is more important to your success, right? How you are dealing with issues, problems, individuals, that emotional intelligence is extremely important. And I think you build on it and you learn from being in the office versus working at home.
Do you, speaking of emotional intelligence, do you study that at all? Or is there books that you've read on emotional intelligence? Anyone who's trying to get better at that, what would you recommend for them?
Good question on this one, because I'm thinking of the books that I read. I couldn't tell you who the authors are.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you on this one. However, the concept of emotional intelligence is something that I think about a lot, and I try to talk to folks at work a lot about making good choices faced with obstacles and challenges based upon a high emotional intelligence. And I learned the hard way. I mean, look, you don't come into the business world knowing everything. You make mistakes, and I certainly have made a lot of mistakes in retrospect. I would have dealt with things differently, but I'm hoping to impart that wisdom of learn faster, quicker than I did, so that you don't have to have as many speed bumps.
Yeah, we've been looking back on and I want to get into how you got into insurance and growing up and all of that. But looking back when you were kind of younger, right? High school, college, early 20s, were you someone who always had a high emotional intelligence?
No,
No.
I was not. No. I grew up in the country. I grew up in the mountains, in Pennsylvania, right on the border of West Virginia. It just wasn't that type of part of the country where you would even think about emotional intelligence. That at that time, for me, I'm sure there were highly emotionally intelligent people that I grew up with. Just for me, that wasn't on the radar. I think where I really recognized this is that when I got outside of that bubble of where I grew up and I started working in Philadelphia and New York, and I realized that I had a different background than everybody. And I realized that my background may not be the correct background to excel in this environment, that I had to figure out what other folks had that I didn't have. And certainly that emotional intelligence was one of those things. I can't say that I made this decision one day and woke up with it. I think it was over a period of time. And so, yeah, this has happened as a lifelong journey as opposed to something specifically happening or something negative happening when I was growing up.
Yeah. One of the things I've read about this, or I've just perceived and learned, is emotional intelligence is something to a certain degree that you can learn.
For sure.
That you can pick up on. So if you're someone who lacks high emotional intelligence, and you have always struck me as someone who has high emotional intelligence. That's so interesting that you said that that wasn't a gift that you had at a young age, but you kind of learned it as you progressed in your career. But to the people listening, I hope that's so encouraging that if you lack something, but you surround yourself with people that have it,
yes,
you will start learning that trait, and it will start becoming a part of you.
Yeah. I mean, for certain, two things about what you just said. Who you hang out with is a huge predictor of your success as a human being, right? I learned that later in life as well. But the emotional intelligence, in order to maybe make that leap of trying to develop your emotional intelligence, you first have to be a self-introspective human being. You need to have something that makes you self-introspective. Some human beings already have it. Some people have, things that happen to them in life that forces them to acknowledge their shortcomings and where they came from and how to make improvements. Some people never come up with it. And so, I think maybe, at least in my experience, was, these were small incremental things that maybe questioned the way that I was thinking and then led to the questioning emotional intelligence.
Yeah. So you come from Pennsylvania. That's where you're from, kind of near West Virginia.
Yeah, just north about Morgantown, West Virginia.
Where did you go to school? You went to University of Pennsylvania?
No, I wish. My wife went to UPenn. I went to Penn State.
Penn State.
No, I shouldn't say I wish.
By the way,
I love
amazing football program right now.
I love Penn State. They're playing Ohio State.
Yeah.
It's going to be an amazing game this Saturday.
I'm excited to watch that game.
It's going to be pretty awesome. Yeah, it's going to be pretty awesome. They're a little banged up right now, so I'm hoping they come into the game healthy.
Okay, so Penn State, and then you got your MBA.
I did. I went to SC.
And studied business there.
I did, yours, right.
And then how did you get into the insurance industry?
So it was 2003, which was really the economy was down after 9/11, right? And so there weren't as much on-campus recruiting as there was, right, in the tech run-up, right, up until 2000. So I looked at industries that weren't recruiting on campus, industries that I wasn't competing with people at SC or UCLA or Stanford, Berkeley, some of the West Coast schools, and insurance was one of those industries. I had interned a few years back in insurance, and I thought the insurance people were interesting and cool. And so I basically cold called all of the insurance brokerage firms saying, I don't really know anything about insurance other than summer internship, but I think I'm going to be pretty good as an insurance broker. And
you cold called them.
Yeah.
So you just took it upon yourself to be like,
yeah,
I want to get into insurance and I'm going to call these people up and see if there's an opportunity.
Yeah, I kept a basic spreadsheet and, researched all the brokerage firms, tiered them by size and what type of business that they wrote, and just called them up. And if they said, no, we're not hiring, I'd say, do you mind if I come in for an informational interview? Learn a little bit more about you and your
I love that, by the way, informational interview.
Right.
Because most people are going to say yes to that.
They will, right.
They'll say, hey, I would love to get to know you and understand what your business does. I mean, if there's an opportunity, great. But if not, I'd love to learn about you.
Yeah.
Most people are going to say yes to that. And then when they meet you, because it takes some bravery, courage, boldness to make a cold call to these people. Right. They're already acknowledging wow, this person, this is impressive that they're just reaching out to us.
Right.
And then when you don't push the job and you just want to push getting to know them and understanding the business, most people are going to say yes to that.
Yeah, and people like earnest people, right?
Yeah.
Most people are nice and they want to help people. They do. If
Definitely.
You ask for somebody's help, in my experience, most people will give you help, right? And so, yeah, that's literally how I ended up in the insurance brokerage industry, was just cold calling and talking with people.
That is cool. One of my favorite quotes is "Fortune favors the bold."
True.
And I feel like what you did there was being very bold and kind of not waiting for opportunity to come to you, but going out and finding opportunity.
Right. And that's actually good. It's a good life lesson, right?
Definitely.
That you
Without
have
a
to go
doubt.
out and make your own luck.
Definitely.
Right? Like push the envelope. Like, that's important to do. I didn't realize it at the time. For me, like I wanted a job and I had just graduated school and the economy was terrible. So for me, this was just sort of a natural thing to do.
Mm-hmm. So, I'm sure this happens to you all the time, Ben, but I've recently been in a position where we've been hiring and we're looking at kind of building the team, and I'll get people in their 20s wanting to start a career in commercial real estate. And they'll be like, hey, I'd love to come in and meet with you. And I'd love to meet with them. But in my industry, and I know in your industry, a lot of the success has to do with tenacity, your willingness to kind of be bold as you were,
Right.
but then also to have great follow-up.
Yes.
And so what I've started doing is I would love to meet with them, but there is a but. What I found myself doing that works pretty well and it's a great filtering process is, let's just say Mason was to reach out to me. Hey, Sean, I'd love to get together and learn about, XYZ. Mason, I'd love to meet with you. Right now is super crazy time for me. Would you mind following up with me in a month?
Right.
Okay. They reach out. Hopefully they reach out in a month, but a lot of them don't actually.
Correct. Right.
They don't reach out.
Right.
Then they'll reach out in a month, and I'll take a note
Right.
that they remembered to reach out. They
Right.
had me in their calendar.
Right.
And then I'll push them off one more time.
Right.
And I'll push them off for like 2-3 weeks.
Right.
And I'll be like, hey, Mason, thanks again. It's still a little crazy for me right now. Let's touch base in 2 to 3 weeks.
Right.
And if they do that, I take the meeting. And
Yeah,
they've
it's a
already
self-screening. Right.
Exactly. It's self-screening. It's already established. A, they reached out, which I give them kudos, but B, then they have the follow-up of the, I'm kind of pushing them off. I'm being kind, pushing them
Right.
off. And are they going to kind of do what they say they're going to do,
Right.
or what I'm asking them to do
Right.
in that follow-up?
Right. Right. In some ways, that's the way the world works, right? That's the way that's the way B2B sales works.
Definitely.
If somebody's willing to meet you through right away, there's usually either a major problem or maybe there's a problem with them, right? And whoever they were working with doesn't want to work with them anymore. And so you often will get that, hey, I'm busy. I like that, right? I like that you're doing that because, you're basically, you can tell if somebody's got it,
Yeah.
right? And if they can get through those multiple times of you pushing them off, then they get to you, you've done a lot of screening right there.
Yeah. Do you have any questions you like to ask, Ben, in
Yeah.
your interview process?
Yeah,
I feel like you asked some probably really great questions.
I think the thing that I ask is, what's the hardest challenge that you've overcome in your life? Like, that's it. Like, what's the hardest thing that you've overcome?
It's a great one.
I think it's a good one because, look, if somebody starts talking about personal stuff, I do have to be, careful on that. But, what I'm looking for is, I moved cross country. I didn't know anybody. I moved to a city. Something happened. I had to pay for college. I had to figure this out, right? I want to find out what that obstacle was because, you can have a pretty nice, cushy life if you have a mom and dad, or if you haven't experienced anything, or you haven't made a baseball team. I mean, heck, how hard that is, right? If you went out to an open tryout to a D1 program, that is not easy, right? Or it's not easy. So I want to find out what qualities you may have that gives you grit.
Totally. Because that, at the end of the day, like to a certain extent, not to a certain extent, but to a full extent, one of the most important indicators of success is grit.
Yes.
So that's a great question to ask to someone who's going into a sales role. What is the hardest thing that you've had to overcome? Or that you've been through, that you've gone through.
Right.
Do you ask, what's the hardest thing you've gone through, or what's the hardest thing you've had to overcome?
I say there's a little nuance on both of them. So I probably have asked it both ways, but I see where you're going. There's a little bit of more of a nuanced answer on this one. I think that I would ask, what's the hardest obstacle, like I said, that you've overcome? I do want to hear what that is. Yeah, I think the answer, like we said, is a good question. I'll have to think about how to phrase that to your point, though, next time.
I don't think there's necessarily a wrong way to ask that question, because I think anyone who's going to interviews, you have to anticipate that that's going to be one of the questions they're likely to ask. Not everyone asks that question, but that's such a great question to understand a person's character.
Yeah, I believe so as well.
Do you ask any other questions?
Yeah, look, there's a series of questions that I'm asking that I'm looking for grit, perseverance, and the ability to take some directions, right? And so I'll ask, tell me about the hardest coach that you've had.
Gosh, I could answer that question for the next few hours.
Yeah. What did you learn from that experience?
Yeah.
Right. you know?
I had a coach that would he was just talk about being critical. He was incredibly critical, but he would do it in a way where it was like every other word was just an F-bomb in your face.
Baseball coaches are unique, aren't they?
They
unique. Are.
It gave me tough skin, which I appreciate him in that regard, but it also took away from that moment of I'm never going to be that type of person.
Right.
There's a better way to communicate this.
Right.
Without screaming F-bombs in someone's face.
Right. Why do you think baseball coaches are unique? I think they are unique in relation to like basketball, football, other types of coaches.
I think baseball is unique as a sport because it's based off of failure. As in, you are in the Hall of Fame if you get 3 hits out of 10, that means you're failing 7 out of 10 times. So in order for a person to want to lean into a sport like that, it takes a certain type of mindset. And I'm sure there's other nuances for why coaches are the way that they are, but that has always been the thing that's drawn me to baseball is it's a sport that's really based off of failure. And it's your ability to bounce back from failure, which separates the kind of average from the great.
It's also, in some ways, it's a solitary sport, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you're on a team, but baseball is, when you play it can't be just yourself. Look, when you're at bat, it's just you. It's not the team, right? When you're in the field making a play, it's just you.
Definitely.
So I've always thought that people that play baseball, maybe they're critical of themselves as a result of playing a sport that seems solitary, and they take that out maybe a little bit, because that's the way they're thinking inside. I don't know. I just always found baseball coaches very unique.
Yeah, I found that one of the best life lessons I gathered from baseball was when I would strike out.
Right.
The reason for that is you're up 3 or 4, maybe even 5 times in a game. And if I was leading off or it was my first at bat of the game and I struck out, if I let that carry over into my defense or my next at bat, it would totally affect me.
Right.
And so you had to learn basically a coping mechanism in your mind of to let it go.
Correct.
Like, he got me that time. Hats off to the pitcher. Good pitch or good job. Good on you.
Right.
But I'm going to get you the next time.
Right.
You need that mindset of you beat me there, but I'm going to beat you next time.
Right.
And you couldn't take that into the next play because it would affect you.
Right. And it's also unique in the sense that if you strike out, you could be sitting on the bench for the next 10 minutes, warm up. So you're thinking 15 minutes versus playing basketball or football. You make a mistake, the play game on, right? It's easy to forget about it as quickly as possible. Baseball is unique that way. Yeah, I agree.
And there was times in my life where I wasn't as good as that as I would like to be.
By the way, I love that I'm talking about baseball as if I was playing all the time. when I was the guy who was on the bench all the time. I think that's the way it would go down.
Yeah, but baseball or sports for what you said is so spot on to you can learn so many incredible life lessons from playing a sport.
I think so as well. And I've got kids that I made sure that they played sports when they were in high school. My daughter played golf. Was she great? No, but she learned how to schedule herself, go to practice, persevere. And I think those are qualities that are helping her now. She's in college. My son plays football, and I love the qualities that you learn playing football. And I can see some results with him as well.
I think it's, I'm not at a point in my life where I have kids, but I look forward to the moment of watching my kids play sports.
It's the best.
Yeah.
It's the best. It's the best. It's so much fun. And by the way, my last name's Stern. There should be no Stern playing quarterback at a big CIF school in Southern California, but I have one, and it's just wild to see.
Your son's a quarterback?
Cornerback, yeah.
So he's fast.
He's lanky.
And very athletic.
He's lanky and athletic, yeah. He's pretty good out there.
That's super cool.
It's fun to see.
So what else? I feel like you're, to a certain degree, Ben, from what I know about you, you're a Renaissance man. And you're into all different types of stuff. What are some of your other passions outside of insurance, building incredible company culture, leadership? What are the other stuff that you like to do or that you're passionate about?
Yeah, I think I really like the arts, right? So I think that I'm a struggling artist inside. I have very little artistic talent. I can't draw a straight line, but I certainly love art and I love design and I love aesthetics. So often, when I travel, which I like to do a lot, oftentimes it'll be cities with really cool art museums and cool architecture to see. And so I do love traveling and I love seeing the beauty of art. So that's something I'm very interested in. And then when you think about even watching movies are beautiful, especially the ones ones from the 70s, right? They were filmed in a really interesting way that's just not done anymore, right? Without CGI and without cast. And so my wife and I enjoy watching old movies together, and I enjoy reading as well. And on the other side, the athletics. I enjoy skiing and golf and the regular things that much like both of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite cities from an art standpoint?
Barcelona is the easiest.
Yeah.
I mean, because Gaudi dominates that city, right? And the folks that live in Barcelona have such a cool style to them, right? Personal style. And so that's easily my favorite. But then, Rome is an amazing city, right? You have the Roman architecture, but then you have some really nice museums that are there as well. New York is amazing.
New York's great.
Right? The Met is amazing.
I just came back from Paris, and Paris is incredible.
I loved Paris as well. The Musée d'Orsay, amazing. And then amazing city as well. Amazing. Really nice people, too, in Paris.
Well, I loved going to the museums, but I also loved the architecture.
I can see that.
Architecture in Paris is just incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing when you go to those European cities who dominated. Mm-hmm. They had so much money. I know. They built some really nice buildings.
I know. I was just learning that I spent some time in London, and the English Empire dominated 1/4 of the world at one point.
Yeah,
that's how powerful they were.
Yeah,
and they look back at when they were basically colonizing or had control over India. Mm-hmm. And supposedly 45 trillion. Now, I don't know how they came up with this number, but what I read was $45 trillion worth of gold, art, like artifacts, all that type of stuff the English pulled out of India and were able to gain from like the English economy or just like what was going on with the India Empire. I don't know if that makes complete sense.
Yeah, maybe in today's dollars.
Yeah,
right?
in today's dollars.
For present value of today's dollars.
Which blew my mind.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you're in London, it's amazing. You can see that wealth of the British Empire that is still there with the buildings. Pretty amazing. Pretty nice art museums as well. And
definitely
in London, the Tate Museum, the Museum of Modern Art's one of my favorites.
I didn't go there, unfortunately.
Yeah,
maybe the next time I'm there.
It's right on the Thames. It's on the other side of the city. Definitely go.
Cool.
Amazing.
And do we talk about Burning Man? Because I know that's an interest of yours.
That is true. That is something that I think my wife and friends would say takes a lot of my time in my head. That is something that I have a lot of friends, and we build art cars, and you introduced me to somebody that maybe we can do some collaboration with.
Yeah.
So that's definitely an interest.
So someone who like myself who's never been to Burning Man,
yes,
knows a little bit about it. Like, how would you explain it to me?
I would say it's a collaboration of individuals that appreciate art. It's an arts festival who appreciate genuine human interaction, right? With people that are open to genuine human interaction. And it's a week long, and it's in the desert in Nevada and under, pretty extreme conditions, dusty and dry. And it's really interesting experiment and an interesting place.
All the people that go to Burning Man are just some of the most interesting people I know.
Yeah, I've met some highly interesting people. It's half international, so you meet a lot of people from around the globe, which I find fascinating. There's a lot of music that's out there as well, mainly electronic music, and so you have people that appreciate that genre of music together. Yeah, and a lot of art as well. It's my favorite part of it.
How do people go to Burning Man?
Roughly about 70,000, people that are there. So it's a big footprint. So that's spread out. So you're not right on top of one another, which is nice.
Yeah. And is it over 3 days, 5 days, 7 days?
7 days, 8 days, Sunday through Monday. It usually ends on Labor Day.
And do you go the whole time normally?
I did this year. Well, I went a little earlier, and I left a little earlier than it ended. So I was there for about 7 days this year. Yeah.
Any crazy experiences that you can share?
Not really crazy experiences, but I like seeing friends that are out there. I like meeting new friends. And, for me, I'm there with some folks that I've been out there with 7-10 years. And so in some ways it's a reunion, yearly reunion, seeing some folks I haven't seen, since last year. And so for me, it's just nice having dinner with people and, just enjoying, the company of folks that you haven't seen and, going out and having a nice time at night as well.
Yeah. I've always wanted to go, but I have very bad allergies, and this might be a bad excuse, but I have incredibly bad allergies. And from everyone I talk to says it's so hard to breathe because of the dust.
I sneeze a lot. So I mean, that may be a challenge for you, but I'd say from a pollen standpoint, there's nothing out there.
Yeah.
So you may be okay. Just put a mask on and go out.
And then what happens that last day? Is that when is there some type of Burning Man? Is that when they're burning the city at the end? Like, is there something that happens?
Saturday, they burn the effigy of the man, which is a pretty large wooden statue, right? And so there's a ceremonies, right, that goes around it. I wouldn't say ceremony, but it's like it happens at a specific time, and there's fireworks and dancers. It's really cool, and most people go out and see that. And then the next day, the temple burns, which is a memorial for folks for individuals, could be pets too, I guess, that have perished over the last 12 months, and that's a very emotional thing that occurs, very visceral and emotional, right? As you can imagine. And then Monday's the Exodus when people leave.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. And I'm meeting with somebody you introduced me with to possibly do a collaboration on another art car, which
I think
cool.
I said this.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Sean is he's been on this podcast. He's such an incredible man. His firm designed. They've had a big role in designing Burning Man in the past years.
Yeah, he's a very creative individual that hopefully when I grow up one day I can emulate and I could be like, because he's giving back from a creative artistic way, which I find really cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's fun. We'll get you out there at one point.
What was your is it called a gift, or like what did you bring?
So we like walking around with freeze pops, like those popsicles you had when you were a kid. So we'll take like a Yeti cooler with dry ice and we'll walk around and just hand them out to people.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, people are so happy, especially if they're working and it's like in the middle of the day, it's so hot. And so it's nice to get a refreshment and you have a little bit of a conversation with somebody, and it's really nice. So it's a nice, genuine human interaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah. Which, I mean, look, we don't have as many of those genuine human interactions anymore. Right. And I think that this event helps perpetuate it maybe to a younger group, that it's okay to talk to somebody. Like, you're not a creeper if you just come up to say like, "Hi, I really like what you're wearing." Right. And I think sometimes that happens in life, but out there that doesn't really happen. Somebody will say, "Thank you. I appreciate that."
Yeah.
Thanks for the genuine compliment.
So everyone's more approachable.
I think so, for certain. Way more approachable. Yeah.
Well, why is that?
I think that it attracts people that either have that quality or want that quality, right? So it's self-selective. I think that's the reason why. I think if somebody goes out there, they're looking for a life-changing event. I don't think it's necessarily it's not an epiphany. I think that they maybe know what they want to do, but they're looking for, the something to make it happen, right? And so maybe they're quiet and they want to be outgoing, but they know they want to be outgoing, but they need something to kind of push it forward. So they go out there and they reinvent themselves. Oh, I'm outgoing. It was already in there, right? But they went there and they were able to unlock it. I think that happens.
Yeah. And what's so cool about that is like an experience like that can give you momentum in your real life, right? So
certain.
Maybe you're a shy, reserved person. You
For
go
certain.
to an experience like Burning Man, or you go to some other community event and you say, okay, I am not going to embody being shy and reserved. I'm going to try to go out of my way to be a little bit more outgoing. And then you put yourself out there and you realize when you put yourself out there, a lot of times, 9 out of 10 times, people embrace it.
Yes.
Right? And then all of a sudden you have a few interactions that go very positively.
Correct.
And then you come back into the real world and you realize, why did I put up this wall? Like,
correct.
You all of a sudden start engaging people at the coffee shop or out and about saying hello to folks.
Yeah, correct. And I don't know if you've been to these types of events where, I'm trying to think of one in particular. You go and it's like a 3-day event. A lot of the workshops are to get people outside of their comfort zones.
Really?
Yeah, for certain on this one, right? And so you'll go, to an event and it's like a 3-day, retreat type of event with, personal, self-growth, courses and things like that. And I've noticed that one of the themes is getting out of your comfort zone. So for example, I remember going to one where you had to like stare at a stranger for like 5 minutes.
Like not say anything.
Not say anything.
Wow.
Like,
just making eye contact.
Just making eye contact with a stranger. And it actually is really much more difficult than it sounds, right? But the idea is to get yourself out of this comfort zone, right? And so I think that doing those sort of things helps to unlock, but it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is that self-introspection. You have to know that there's an issue that you want to address in order to go do something like that so that you can overcome it, right? You have to be self-aware. And there are events like, Burning Man and the ones I was talking about where you can go and maybe unlock something that will make you just a better human being.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That is.
I recommend anybody, if you are looking at this summit, like the summit events are like that, like-minded, professional individuals trying to unlock some things. And I think that if you go into it with a purpose, you could get some good stuff out of it.
Yeah, the summit events are great.
Yeah.
In my first job out of college, I went and worked for a company called Biz Now Media, which
I only laugh because I do stuff with Biz Now.
Do you really?
Yeah, I think they're a good group.
Yeah, so once upon a time, I was up on stage emceeing all those events.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, right out of college, that was my first job.
It seems like a well-run organization. I just was at a Biz Now event 2 weeks ago.
Were you speaking at it?
No, but I'm speaking at an event here in Los Angeles, a multifamily.
Oh, you're gonna crush.
Conference.
Yeah, you're gonna do so well.
Doing something like this.
Yeah. So once upon a time, I was putting together those panels and those events and emceeing them. And the reason I bring that up is because the founder of Biz Now also founded the Summit Series. So there was a lot of crossover.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. And now I understand because in the back of my head, I was thinking this Biz Now is a really well-run organization. And I like the people, the talent that they attracted. So that actually makes sense, the relationship with Summit, who also runs really good events.
Yeah. So you brought something up about getting out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
When is the last time, and maybe it was when you had this 5-minute stare with a stranger, but when was the last time you were out of your comfort zone that you can recall?
It's interesting that you asked this question because I've been asking myself how to get outside of my comfort zone recently. I really have, right? And I feel that it's something that you need to do consistently, and I haven't done it in some time. And so I'm trying to think of ways to do that. I have no problem approaching people and talking to people, thankfully, right? So for me, maybe doing something that's a little scary would be interesting, or something very difficult. So I was thinking about maybe I would be curious if I could walk for 24 straight hours.
Oh my gosh. I've done that.
You have done that?
Yeah, I walked for 24 straight hours. By the way, I have a friend who wants to put on another event of walking 24 hours.
Oh.
So maybe you should
hook us up.
Yeah, for sure.
Hook us up.
So I was inspired by a friend of mine. I don't know if you happen to know him, Curtis Estes.
No.
Curtis is a great man. He basically read this book by a Navy SEAL. And one of the ways the Navy SEAL recommends that you have more discipline in your life, or you have more discipline in your life, is doing things that are outside of your comfort zone. Yeah. So the things about Navy SEAls,
read this book.
Yeah, the things about Navy SEAls is they get comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yes.
So if you think about Navy SEAL training, it's all about making you as uncomfortable as you can be.
Right.
So you tap out and you're not a Navy SEAL. But if you can push through that being uncomfortable, you become a Navy SEAL.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
So he basically wrote this book on ways that you can challenge yourself as a civilian to kind of push through being uncomfortable. And one of his challenges is a 24-hour walk. Yeah. And so you walk for 50 minutes, right, and then rest for 10. Walk for 50 minutes, rest for 10. And I did this back in, I want to say 2021, towards the end of the year. And it was one of the cooler experiences of my life, actually, because
Did you do it here in LA?
Yeah. Yeah. So we started in Santa Monica, where I live, and we walked all through Los Angeles, went to Dodger Stadium, walked around the city. And it was really profound and cool for a few different reasons. Number one is it's a cool way to see the city, because you're walking the streets and you're going down different, you're going into places that you've never been, and you're doing it as just, walking. So you're able to kind of take it in a lot more than you would if you were just driving or parking and then going into one spot and leaving. So that was really cool. Second thing was the conversations you had with people. Right. Because you have 24 hours. So it's not surface level. It's surface level maybe for the first 30 minutes, an hour. And then you're kind of getting into it and opening up to people. Because the people that do that thing, they're doing it for a reason. And everyone has a different why on why they want to do something like that. So you kind of dive into all that, which is really cool.
Now, would you recommend starting at, let's say, 6 in the evening, so you finish up at 6 in the evening the next day, or would you go midnight to midnight? Any recommendations?
We started at 6 a.m.
6 a.m.
And then we finished at 6 a.m.
Okay.
Which was really cool.
I like that.
And it was cool for a few different reasons. And the third reason, kind of bringing it back, why it was so profound and awesome, is the first 6 hours of it are so fun. The second 6 hours are pretty easy and you're kind of going deep. You get to the halfway mark and you're like, oh, wow, this is pretty hard. The next 6 hours are hard. And the reason you do this walk is for that last 6 hours, because that tells you a lot about yourself. And most people actually tap out after, call it those 18 hours. Like we started with 14 people and 4 finished. And it's those last 6 hours that in this book he talks about that really tells you who you are, because everyone can walk for 24 hours, especially if you're taking 10-minute breaks every hour. But it's really hard to do.
Right.
It's a mental grind.
Right. This is what I hear.
That last 6 hours really kind of shows you who you are. And it was amazing. And so I'll definitely connect you with my buddy Curtis,
totally in this one.
because I ran into him at a longevity event, which I know that's something that you're also interested in. He was hosting a longevity event, and Curtis, every time I see him, he likes to go around and introduce himself, and I'm with them, and he's like, I did a 24-hour walk with this guy. And so he's introducing us as like people that did 24 hours. And so he brought it up basically being like, hey, let's do another one. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds great.
All right. The fact that I mentioned this, you have experience on that's kind of meant to be.
Yeah.
We'll touch base and figure out how to make it happen.
What was the reason? So there's so many things you could do that are uncomfortable. Why did a 24-hour walk get your attention?
I'll tell you, because it's something I think my wife could do with me.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so, I like I said, scary things. It's scary in a different way. It's not like, going down a crazy chute, when you're skiing, up the mountains. It's just scary because it's a long time. And I thought, you know what, she could do this with me. And, we'll have some time where we can chat about a lot of things and I, could share this experience with her. So that's where my head, why I went to this type of a thing to do.
That's cool. Yeah. Would you want to do it with a group or just you two?
I would do it with a group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we did it, one of the guys, and I didn't know him at the time, but one of the guys that came was actually the founder of Mendocino Farms, the restaurant. And so what was so cool was we basically, the route we took was like to the next Mendocino Farms.
Yeah.
So we would start and walk, and like we'd have like sandwiches and soups and salads waiting for us.
Right.
And we basically did the path of Los Angeles, of like going to all the different Mendocino farms.
I can imagine. It's one of my favorite restaurants. It was the guy's name, Mario.
Yeah, Mario. I did it with Mario.
I kind of did some work for him, and his wife, I think, was one of his business partners. When they're starting out, really interesting entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And a great sandwich. That Farm Club's good. So give them a commercial.
So
right
good. Okay, so we got to put this together.
Yeah.
We got to do the 24-hour walk.
Yeah.
Are you wanting to do it sooner rather than later?
Always want to do things sooner rather than later.
Wait, I love that.
Time,
is that a part of your ethos, like your motto of like sooner is better than later? Like
sooner is better than later.
ASAP.
If you plan things ahead, at least for me, sooner I get them done. Right? You get it done. Right?
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in just getting stuff done, and not that you can't plan this 6 months in advance, but who the heck knows? Something may happen. Oh, I've got to reschedule. If we can find some time, let's just do it.
I love that.
Let's just do it.
And I think that there's so many people like yourself that are very successful that's a big part of their brand, where it's like action, do. Like, let's get it done. Let's put it on the calendar. Like, let's not push it out.
Also, too, if you accomplish something like that and you have something really cool to talk about, why wait? Why wait to make that accomplishment? You're just waiting to talk about with your friends and getting the rewarding experience, right? Like, let's just do it now.
Yeah. Yeah,
I can put a group together.
Okay, cool. I would love to. Yeah. We'll get Curtis involved too. There was 14 people that did it with us last time, and 4 of them finished. And so I think that we could probably get a pretty good group together for this.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe we start down in Manhattan Beach. We got to figure out the route too.
I do. My head was already going that way.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Manhattan
where do I want
Beach.
to be walking at 4 a.m?
Yeah. Well, that's the that's the hardest part. Is that 3 a.m, 4 a.m, 5 a.m. 5 a.m, actually, you only have an hour left. You're like, I got this. Yeah. It's really like at the hour 20, 21, 22.
Right.
And you're not really talking.
Right.
You're just 1 foot in front of the other. 1 foot in front of the other. Which is, to the audience that's listening, if you do something like that, there's this concept in Japanese culture called the misogi.
Yeah.
Have you heard of this before?
I read a book, and the misogi was the theme of the book.
Yeah. So basically, and if you're not familiar with what a misogi is, it's this concept or idea that you do something that there's a high probability or there's a chance that you're not going to succeed. But if you succeed and follow through with it, it changes the trajectory of the rest of your year.
Yes.
Because it creates a lot of like self-confidence.
Right.
And doing something like this, whether it's a 24-hour walk, or it doesn't have to be a 24-hour walk. It could be like going to go speak at a wedding, if you're afraid of public speaking. There's something that you're doing that's putting yourself in a situation where you're uncomfortable.
Correct.
And you're overcoming it.
Yes.
And then you can kind of reap the benefit
Yes.
of being proud of yourself
yes.
for doing that.
Yes, this is going to be my Misogi for 2025.
Yes.
Yeah, very familiar with this concept.
Yeah. My Misogi this year was the Berlin Marathon. So I just got back from the Berlin Marathon.
Jeez, what a fun place to run a marathon,
it was
because it's really interesting to look at, right?
Yeah, from a historic standpoint, from an architecture standpoint. I went to Oktoberfest back in 2018, and then we went up to Berlin after, and it was right when the marathon was happening. And I basically made a promise to myself that I'm like, the next time I'm in the city, I want to be running this marathon. And so this was the year I wanted to go for it. And so I applied, I got in through a charity, raised money for that charity, and then went and did it.
Amazing.
And the marathon, I will tell you, is so much like the 24-hour walk.
Yeah.
Where it's just one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other.
I can see that.
And one of the takeaways, and we did a podcast episode not too long ago about my takeaways from the Berlin Marathon. And one of the things is doing things in your life that make you proud. You don't get a ton of opportunities to put yourself in situations where you're uncomfortable.
Yes.
And you have the ability to overcome adversity and make yourself proud.
Yes.
And there was so many takeaways that I had from the Berlin Marathon, but that was very much like front of mind for me of, I trained for 6 months, put it all together, put the trip together, raised the money, dealt with a crazy amount of injuries, showed up on race day, and was able to kind of follow through and cross the finish line, which was super cool.
That's pretty amazing. Now, did you try to go to the famous Berkheim, the club, while with wearing your bib and your number?
No,
they may let you in on that.
I know. I actually thought about that, but after the marathon, so you can't do that before,
right?
Because I flew in. I was only there for a few days, acclimated, and then did the marathon. When I was done with the marathon, I was so exhausted.
I can imagine.
That the thought of going to a club and listening to crazy electronic music was not an option. As much as in my mind I would have loved to make that work, it's just, you are exhausted.
A Misogi on top of a Misogi there.
Yeah. Have you ever been to that club?
No, I've heard it's the famous club that.
Yeah, where you have to wear all black.
I'm not cool enough. You
might be.
No, I've got a friend that who told me, he said, you to get in, you have to dress like you hate your father.
By the way, it's so true.
Right.
And like what you do is you wait in a line for 30 minutes, an hour, maybe a few hours. And then there's this famous guy, and I think GQ did an article about him where he just looks you up and down. And if he likes your vibe, he lets you in.
Yep.
But if he doesn't, he says, I'm sorry, you can't come in.
That's how it goes.
Could you imagine waiting hours and hours to go in and then he says no?
Yeah, maybe when I was younger, but I think that the older that I get, I'm like, I don't want to deal with the rejection when I get up there.
Yeah. Yeah. Could you imagine? I ran the marathon. Why aren't you letting me in?
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. Okay, so the Misogi for 2025 is...
It's going to be the walk.
The walk.
Yeah.
Maybe
so
even...
I'm making it official right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. What's your Misogi?
We're doing we're shooting a short film every month for a year straight. Our first one on Friday. Does that count?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not easy to do. That's pretty cool.
Also, if you're looking for someone to join you on your walk.
Yeah, you should do it. We'd love to have you.
You want to do it? Mason's in on this one?
Mason's in. Yeah, we should do it.
Awesome.
By the way, would you be willing to do it? I mean, going back in trying to do things ASAP, would you be willing to do it before the end of the year?
Yes.
Okay.
That's where my head's at
right
now. My head's
cool.
like, let's do it before the end of the year.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll right after this podcast, I'll text Curtis and see if we can kind of put something together.
Okay, let's do it. That sounds awesome.
Okay, so from this conversation, what I've taken away is you are someone who is very self-aware, who's done a ton of work in striving to be the best version of themselves.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Is there podcasts or books that you would recommend to anyone?
Yeah. I mean, there's some of the ones I like. I like the Simon Sinek has a great podcast.
He's great. He's
right?
so good.
It's so positive. And I'm such a big believer in just trying to fill your life up with positivity.
Yeah.
And I think he's really an interesting human being. I love his podcast.
Same. Really. I really like it too.
I love that podcast a lot. That's a big one that I listen to. I find myself listening. I wouldn't maybe say they're so positive, but I find them interesting. I like Sam Harris. I think is interesting, an interesting human being with an interesting perspective on life. I like people who have maybe a little bit of a counter perspective on what's happening, in life. Look, I try to take stress out of my life. So I'm from Pittsburgh, or outside Pittsburgh, right? I'll listen to a lot of Steeler podcasts.
You're having a great year.
My car right now. I guarantee there's a Steeler podcast that I played as I was driving here.
Yeah.
I guarantee it.
You guys are having a great year.
Yeah, 6-2. They won last night.
Surprising.
Yeah.
I don't feel like people were projecting them to have this type of record, but they're doing great.
We were talking about positivity, and I think that city is so positive when it comes to that football team. Maybe like not positive, but supportive. And so that city wills that team to playing well. And there's other cities like that. St. Louis does it with baseball. Green Bay seems to do it with football as well. It's this collective support and positivity, I think, infuses within an organization in that city and has and they play well. And I think in business, you also see some very positive businesses that they just play well. It's interesting, right?
It's definitely interesting. It's a city I want to visit and go to.
Highly recommend it.
Because there's so much historic context to Pittsburgh.
It's cool.
At one point, it was probably the wealthiest city in the world.
It was, man. Back, when Andrew Carnegie was alive.
In the late 1800s or early 1900s, because of all
you
the steel.
You see the remnants of that wealth. Essentially, almost the Silicon Valley of the late 18th century, right? I mean, that's where the wealth was condensed, and you still see it. They have a wonderful museum as well, and art museum in Pittsburgh. Good symphony. It's a great city. People are genuine in Pittsburgh. That's what I like about it.
Yeah,
you can talk to people in Pittsburgh.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. Everyone I've met from Pittsburgh is just salt of the earth.
Yeah, they're good people.
Really good people. Really, really good people. Any books, Ben, you'd recommend?
Yes, fiction. Okay. I'm a big believer in reading fiction because we all read self-help books all the time in business.
What fiction books? I'm looking for a new fiction book right now.
Okay, so I'm reading this book. It's called Battle Royale.
Cool.
I think it's called Battle Royale. The author is a Japanese author. His name is Takame. Essentially, it takes place in this alternate Japan, sort of like the Hunger Games, but takes place in Japan. But the difference between the Hunger Games and this book is the character development. So basically, it's like it's like 48th graders have to fight to the death. But the backstories for all of the characters is so good.
Wow,
it's so good. It's so good. I'm loving it. It's so good. I really like it.
It's fourth graders fighting till the death.
Eighth grade. Eighth grade. Yeah, and I think they made a movie too. 15 years ago.
Cool.
I haven't seen the movie. Just finishing the book. It's really, really good.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a great recommendation.
Yeah.
Any others?
I'm trying to think what's on my bookshelf right now. I'm usually reading like 5 books at a time, which is actually a little bit of a problem because it's hard to finish books, right? I don't know. What are you reading right now?
I just finished, what did I finish? I'm like you. I read a ton of self-development books. And I started reading more fantasy when I was in Europe. I just read fantasy the entire time I was there. One of the books I've been obsessed with is, it's a fantasy book, Red Rising.
Okay.
Have you heard of it?
Is it a current author?
It's a current author. I don't know. I could look it up, but basically think of Game of Thrones meets Hunger Games meets like Harry Potter-esque.
Okay.
And so the idea of it, and I don't want to give away too much, but I'm on a text chain with my friends right now because of this book, because all 6 books are so incredible that we all just are on a text chain talking about it. Like the text chain it's like theme of it is like these 6 books. That's how good it is. But basically the premise of it is it's a society that's based off a class system. And every class has a color, and they have some type of role within society.
Right.
And they're all ruled by the golds.
Okay.
And so the reds are like the lowest class system, and they're like responsible for certain things. And the golds basically just hold everyone down, and everyone like basically all the jobs that they do are to like feed up to the golds.
Yeah.
And
it sounds I don't know if you've read the Aldous Huxley book, Brave New World, but Brave New World has a class.
I read that in high school.
Has a class system just like that. Yeah. Very similar to that. Alphas, the betas.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's a really, really great book. I'd recommend that to anyone. So one of the other questions I would love to ask is, I feel like asking someone podcasts, books, best practices are all so important, but what's equally as important is asking people what they choose to say no to or what they choose not to do. So what are certain things in your life that you're like, I stay away from that, or like I don't do these types of things?
Okay, so the one thing that I try to stay away from is just negativity.
Yeah.
I don't want to be around negative people.
I love that. And I'm the same way.
Don't want to be around negative people.
Yeah.
I don't want to be around people that don't have high integrity. I think the older that I get, the more I realize that integrity is one of the most important human qualities, right, to have. So right at my age at 50, Thankfully, I can be around some folks that have high integrity, right? Because you get to 50 and, you've reached a certain level in life. It's hard to get there without integrity. Although it still happens. I still meet some jerks, right, that they're my age. But high integrity is somebody that I try to hang out with. I want people positive, no negativity. And then just from, a life standpoint, I really try to get more sleep than I used to, right? I'm more productive and I feel better.
How many hours of sleep are you getting?
Minimum of 8.
8 hours.
Minimum of 8, yeah.
Do you ever find, I sometimes fall into this where, gosh, like I want to get up and start the day and just be an early riser.
Right.
But I'm not getting enough sleep. And so
Yeah.
there's this balancing act of wanting to be someone who's getting up every day at 5, but getting up at 5, if I'm going to bed at 10, 11, 12, it's like, I'm not getting that 8 hours.
It's hard to do.
And so it's a balancing act of like getting the sleep, but not beating myself up because I'm sleeping a little bit more.
Yeah.
Do you fall into that at all?
So one of the mistakes for this year was I was waking up at 5:30 in the morning and then going to the gym. Mm-hmm. And I was doing that 4 or 5 days a week. And I did that for the first, a little less than half of the year. My son was waking up for football. He had weightlifting. So I decided to help him out and I'd wake up with him and take him to school and then go to the gym.
That's so cool that you did that with him.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I always wanted to wake up early and see what that was like. It sucked.
It's not easy.
It really did. I'm not a morning person. I couldn't really stick to that routine. So to your point about getting the sleep, yeah, it's hard. I need to get that sleep. I don't know the hack, because if you go to sleep early, you get the 8 hours, but you miss out on cool stuff at night.
Yeah.
And so, it sounds like you don't want to miss out on, cool stuff either.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge.
It's a challenge. It's also a sacrifice, to your point, because it's like if you're into culture and art and creative things,
right,
like a lot of that actually happens at night.
Yeah.
That's what I find
true.
that part of the brain, or those types of people that are drawn to those types of things, they're more night people.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in the business world, you might be inclined to be trying to get up earlier.
Yeah.
And so it's this balancing act of something's going to have to give. You're going to have to sacrifice some area of your life.
Yeah. So I always wanted to wake up early, right? And now that I did it and I don't do it, I don't think of myself as a failure for not doing it. What I realized is that you have to find a schedule that works for you.
What's the schedule that works for you?
So for me, I like working out in the middle of the day or as soon as I get home.
Got it.
I'll still wake up and run in the morning. I just won't do it at 6 in the morning. Maybe I'll run at 6:30, and maybe instead of going to the gym, I'll just like put on shorts and run around the neighborhood. So save a little bit of time. But I realized that some human beings are just wired to do that. They can just do it. And if you're not wired to do it, try it. If you can't stick to it, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It's just you're proving to yourself that it's just really hard for you to wake up and do that in the morning. But figure out what does work for you. Yeah.
I think working out in the middle of the day is one of the best productivity hacks you can do.
Agreed.
If it doesn't get in the way of like your work schedule, which sometimes it does, but if you can set up your life in a way where you're getting up, cranking, doing what you need to do in the morning, and then use it as a break to kind of break up the day, get that workout in, you just don't have that afternoon kind of like lull or like where you're just like kind of hitting a bit of a wall. Like I found working out midday actually energizes me for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on this one. And it's also to alleviate stress from the day, right?
Definitely.
In the middle of the day, you're not taking that into the office.
Yeah.
And then you can go home and go to happy hour, go to dinner with somebody afterwards.
Absolutely. So, one last thing that we brought up that I didn't even mention this, but this is a funny thing that also happened to me when I did the 24-hour walk. Are you familiar with who David Goggins is?
Of course. He's like the most mentally fit human being on the planet.
Okay. So David Goggins was, I would say, a key component to me doing this 24-hour walk. Okay. I was reading his books. He doesn't challenge you to go walk 24 hours in his books. Another Navy SEAL book that I read did. But coincidentally, we ran into David Goggins on this 24-hour walk.
What?
Yes, and I have a photo of it to prove it. We
literally, that's wild.
So we were in Century City. We were getting like a croissant or a coffee, and we'd been walking for, call it, 4 or 5 hours. And across Santa Monica Boulevard, right around Westwood, I would say, I see this really buff guy running across the street on the sidewalk.
Right.
And I'm like, to everyone there, and at that point there was 14 of us. I was like, guys, that's David Goggins.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, no way. I'm like, no, I know what David Goggins
Yeah,
looks
he's
like.
distinctive
That
looking,
is
right?
David Goggins. And so no one believed me. So I took off and I just ran after him. And I'm like, David. And he looked, he's like, what's up, brother? I'm like,
that's exactly what I picture
here.
him saying.
I was like, David, you're not going to believe this. Like, I'm literally put on a 24-hour walk, or me and my friend put on a 24-hour walk. Like, we're doing it right now, and you inspired this. Like, you were a big part of why I wanted to do this.
Right.
So I ended up running with him for about half a mile, 3/4 of a mile, just talking with him.
Right.
And he was super like inspirational and encouraging, like all the things you would imagine.
It's amazing.
And I did the thing that I don't normally do, but I'm like, David, like, do you mind if I get a photo with you? Because this is like too crazy of a, yeah, exactly.
Right.
And he's like, sure. So I get a photo with him and I go back and I show everyone the photo and I also tell them that was David Goggins. But it was an experience, not only because the 24-hour walk was so amazing, but like, had we not done that, like I wouldn't have been in a situation where we ran into David Goggins when I was doing something that he inspired. It just was such a crazy like life moment.
Right. Do you think that in some ways it was manifested, right? This positive energy attracts other positive energy. And in a weird way, that wasn't as coincidental, right?
Yeah.
As maybe somebody would think, right?
I 100% think like cult, universe, God, like
Yes.
there was definitely things happening that are like out of my understanding,
right?
To kind of set all that up.
I mean, what an amazing life for this guy to live too, is that he puts this positive energy in the universe.
Yeah.
Right. And folks like yourself and myself can take some of that positive energy and then create some more positive energy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Ben, this was so fun, man.
It was totally fun.
This was so great. I'm so glad you came on. We got to talk about so many cool things: insurance, your life story, all leadership, health and longevity.
I appreciate
Burning Man. I mean, gosh.
Well, thankfully, we didn't talk about Burning Man that as much as maybe I probably could have. So we were able to pivot away from that, which was actually good for the audience.
Well, thank you for being on, man. We really appreciate you.
I appreciate having me on. Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Cool.